Tanya Sims and Maggie Richardson are here tonight to provide you with some background information on the units of study in writing. As Leetta mentioned, I know that you were able to witness some of that, but we also have proposed the adopting of units of study of writing for kindergarten through 8th grade writing instruction. We hope that this presentation will provide you with a quick overview of the resource and impact statements from staff and students who have implemented the program. And so tonight, along with Kim and Maggie, we brought a few staff members here that will share a little bit about their experience with it and the positive, and then share some other input from students. So I'm going to pass it over to Kim.
Good evening. We're really excited to share with you a resource that we plan to bring alongside all of the foundational skills work that our students have been doing as we strive to have a comprehensive literacy program here in Olathe. This resource would allow our students to extend and grow while also providing opportunities for application of those foundational skills. So just a quick overview of what a workshop framework is, and this is not necessarily specific to just this resource, it's kind of a model of instruction. There are three main parts. The first part is the mini lesson. This is where there's explicit instruction following an I do, we do, you do gradual release of the instruction model. The teaching points are clearly stated at the beginning of every lesson, and then there's ample opportunity for teacher modeling of what that skill looks like before kids practice either in a small group or partner while they're still here, give it a go on their own, and then go out to the work time. And the work time is really where we hit one of our big three with choice and engagement. Now, granted, this is not a free-for-all choice, like you can just go do whatever. It's kind of controlled choice, but kids buy in a lot more when they get to make their decisions and be, I think I heard that Heritage, they called it the captain of your own writing. Like, so when the kids can make those decisions, the teacher kept asking, the student would ask, do I have to do this? Can I do this? And she's like, well, you're the captain of your writing. What do you think you should do? And so that really improves the engagement and gets kids really involved. Another piece of the work time that's really critical is the individual conferring and small group time. This allows teachers to have a constant feedback loop with their students, which is one of the strongest effect sizes of evidence-based practices, because they are constantly during that chunk of time meeting with a small group, meeting with an individual, going over to another individual, and going around and meeting each student exactly where they are, and taking, this is where you're at, this is the next step. This is where you're at, this is your next step. So it really provides that opportunity for differentiation and meeting the needs of all students, whether it be students who are going well beyond what the rest of their class is, or students who are struggling and need some more foundational support. And then we always end the workshop with a share, and that's just kind of an opportunity to provide some authenticity to it. We're gonna share with a partner, share with the whole group, so that we can celebrate what we did today. And that also provides a little bit of accountability. And this whole workshop time leads to an abundance of time spent actually writing. And I mean, that's what our kids need to be doing to improve, is increase their volume of reading and writing. And so you can see if they're spending 25 to 30 minutes engaged in actual writing, that only has positive effects. Okay.
So one of the things that we have centered in our quest to do better is the idea that our students experience a K-12 experience and that it's cohesive. And so when we started looking for resources, we were looking for a resource or resources that would provide a broader range of grade levels accessible in that resource to meet that expectation or that hope that we can provide a more consistent and cohesive experience K-12. And so we were excited when we found units of study because it covers K-8, which then leads our students to be able to have a comprehensive, cohesive writing experience from grades K through 8 that cumulatively builds on itself year after year. Another piece that we're looking for when we look at resources is always the standards. Are we grounded in our state standards? And units of study fit this to a T, really hits strongly on the writing standards in particular, but also wrap in the reading and the speaking and listening. Part of our standards expect argument writing, informational, and narrative writing to happen every year, even with our littles. And units of study provide that, and so every year the student will have explicit instruction in argument writing, obviously grade level appropriate, but then we'll grow the next year as a first grader, and I'm gonna try again as an argument writer, and then as a second grader, and so on as we build that up. Another piece that we look at that's one of our big responsibilities is to make sure that we're really up to date on research and evidence-based practices. And so when we went making sure that there were evidence, as we were looking at evidence-based practices, we found the CEDAR report, and it outlines the 10 evidence-based practices that you can see on the screen. That's actually spelled out even further. There's 34 evidence-based practices within that document. And as we were studying the evidence-based practices, again, with units of study, we were excited to find that units of study meets many, many of those. And another piece that we find really important as we're looking at resources is, does it fit our portrait of a graduate? And while we know that this document is teeny tiny for you to see, just the visual itself is pretty powerful. What we had the team do was look at the resource and say, okay, let's look at this against our portrait of a graduate. And how many of those competencies does it align to, or does it highlight? And as you can see, just as at a glance, what the top is what the team felt the competencies in each of those areas were highlighted in the units of study. And below the line is how it is actually manifested within the units of study and the workshop approach. So we've basically directly tied the resource to our portrait of a graduate, which I think is really exciting. The final piece that we always want is teacher feedback and student feedback and input. And I am not going to steal the thunder of the wonderful 3 ladies behind me because they're going to be able to speak to it far better than I can. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Swearingen, and I teach 5th grade at Manchester Park. Thank you for the opportunity this evening to talk to you about not just a resource, but a topic that I think all 3 of us, all 3 teachers would agree we're very passionate about. And that's because we've seen the huge impact that this has had on our students. So I have notes that I'm going to read to make sure I don't talk all night, because I really feel like I could do that about this. I was asked to share what workshop feels like from the teacher's perspective. I've been using it for the past 4 years since we started the pilot. But I don't think that you could probably really understand my perspective until you hear about and from my students. On our last day of school, so just last week, I asked my 5th graders, what are some of your best memories of 5th grade? And I want you to keep in mind that the day before, we'd gone to main event for our end of the year field trip. So I kind of thought that might be a lot of their answers, but nearly half of them said writer's workshop. And that's not unique to this year. That would be true from all 4 years that I've done workshop. So I reflected on that. I mean, why is that one part of our day what so many of the students would say is their favorite part of the year? Why do they love workshop so much? And speaking to the teacher perspective, I think that one of the reasons is because of the confidence that I've gained as a teacher of writing that just spills over into my students, and the confidence that they have and the joy that they find in writing. Every lesson is geared towards that, not just growing your writers, but also growing you as a teacher of writing. Every part of the lesson, every part of the units is like a little pocket of professional development. Every year you use it, you learn a little bit more that you can give to your students. For example, each daily lesson provides teachers with a sample script of the lesson, so you can take the pieces that apply to your students. There's tips for modifications of the lesson to meet your students as writers where they are. So we can grow our struggling writers, but we can also enrich those that are ready for the next step. It also gives suggestions for small groups and one-on-one conferring that they use during their independent writing time. Like I said, I could talk to you about this for a long time. I've seen the impact that it's had on my students, and you've heard from them. They love writing time.
Hi there. Can you hear me? I am Tanya Sims, and I teach 6th grade at Summit Trail, so I'm speaking to you today from a middle school perspective. We are a lab site school, and all of the English language arts teachers at Summit Trail have been piloting the program for the past 3 years. So I would like to start by saying I found it to be an effective and an easy to use program, and I know that's extremely important for our teachers that we have something that's both valuable and sensitive to our time constraints. I know personally I am a better teacher of writing, and I am a better writer myself after using this program for the last 3 years. I'd like to highlight a couple of the components of the program that I have found most effective. The first is the mini lessons. I found them to be so explicit and easy to follow. I really appreciate the I do, we do, you do format that was mentioned earlier, because it allows me right during that mini lesson time to see my students who already have mastered this concept and need enrichment, and it also lets me see those students who still need time to work. I can quickly formulate groups right after that mini lesson and start a small group conference so students aren't left behind. They either have something more advanced to work on, something, if they're confused, I can pull a small group of students who need that clarification and get them started. So I feel like it really goes from level to level. I also love the frequent check-ins and progress monitoring that we do in many different times. During the mini lessons, during those small groups, during those individual conferences, it helps me have a better understanding of where my students are and where they still need to go. And I'd also like to touch on a few of the celebrations that I've had with my students, because I think that that is the best part of the program for me, is how it's impacted them. First off, there is huge growth in the quality and volume of writing that's done. And we know we've got to have students writing more. And we've seen this across content areas as well in the middle school. So my social studies and science teachers are saying that same thing to me. We see this in their assessments that we do, and also in what students report. I did a survey of students at the end of the year this year, and I'll reference that a couple of times. I've also seen growth in their soft skills. What she was mentioning earlier about the portrait of the graduate, I had several teachers come in, since we are a lab site school, and observe my teaching and the students interacting in a workshop model. And at the end of the lesson, they came to me and said, I am amazed at the academic vocabulary being used by sixth graders. I'm amazed by their ability to explain to us what the skill is that they're trying to master, and also their ability to interact with one another and, give feedback and receive feedback at that sixth grade level, which is something I know some adults even struggle to do appropriately at times. A nice side benefit is that there are fewer behavior issues. Since there's only a 10-minute mini lesson, it's a quick lesson, kids are engaged, they're active and participating, and then it switches and they're often working, and they have lots of resources to help them stay focused and successful. Students also are feeling empowered to make decisions about what their writing needs. One of my students wrote to me, it gives more power for the student. We get to have it the way we want it. And I think that's very powerful when in a world where they don't always feel like they have a lot of choice. And when I'm not available to help, the students aren't stuck. They can use mentor text, checklists, writing partners, and anchor charts. And these are all things that are taught to our students on how to use those effectively when the teacher isn't available. And then also there's a huge growth in the confidence and attitude. Here are several comments I received. I never knew I could write like this. It got me more excited to write than the other things I have done in the past. It was way easier to learn when you do it yourself, rather than being taught what to do and then later being expected to use a skill in your writing. And then finally, it helped me become more independent. I can do things on my own, even if I thought I couldn't. So those are some great celebrations.
Hello, I'm Emily Bai, and I am a third grade teacher at Heritage, and I know some of you had the pleasure of coming to speak with some of my students. And I get to take on the topic of students specifically, which obviously is my favorite part of all of this program. I have a unique perspective in that I get to see a wide variety of students in my classroom, ranging from ELL students, those that we're offering enrichment to, and also those that need extra support. And I can honestly and truly say that this program reaches every single one of them on the level that they are at. It meets them where they are and then brings them further than even I think they could have anticipated. Specifically with ELL students, I've seen so much growth in students that are new to the country, that barely speak the language. And just the confidence and skills that they gain through this program is astonishing. They feel comfortable and confident, and because of that, they're able to make huge growth throughout the year. It also applies to those that need additional support. Those students that need some differentiation, a little additional instruction, have the opportunity to meet with teachers in individual conferencing or small groups. It provides the time for us to do that, which is the most critical thing, as you know, time in a classroom. And because of that, those students are then met where they are, and they can move further. But beyond that, it does transfer over to other things. I've seen that the skills that they've gained in Writer's Workshop help them in social studies, in reading, in science, all across the board. And because of that, we have better rounded students and students that truly believe that they can and will achieve their goals. More importantly, though, one of my favorite pieces of this is the opportunities for extension and enrichment for students. As you know, a lot of times, that's difficult to achieve. And this truly does, this program allows that at every step. And specifically, I always think of one student this year who could write to any teacher, and at the end of the year chose to write her letter to me, and I was her teacher in 3rd grade, so it had been a few years since she had been there, and obviously, pandemic and all these other things, she chose to write her letter to me, and her letter specifically mentioned that in 1st semester of 3rd grade, she and I had worked together to complete her extensive, and I mean extensive, report on blobfish, and how that meant so much to her that I would have sat and read her entire, I can't remember how many page book, and that was what stuck with her through all of her years at our school. So I truly and honestly can say to you as a teacher that has done this for 3 years that I'm a better teacher because of it, and our students are better equipped because they truly do believe that they are writers as they go through this program.
Thanks for letting Learning Services hog the show tonight. I just want to share that. Tara Payton could not be here tonight, but she, as an administrator, wanted to share her quick experience, an experience with you.
Hi, greetings from Heritage Elementary School. I am Tara Payton, the current principal, and I am so sorry I can't be with you in person this evening, but I asked if I could send a quick video to share just some of the things that I have loved at the Writers Workshop Units of Study resource that we have been using here at Heritage. And I would just start off by saying that teacher confidence in teaching writing is inspiring. Once you get going in the program, it is easy to use, and you are modeling such great writing skills and patterns for these students. The academic language that is used throughout the lessons is exactly what our kids need as a foundation moving into middle and then high school. We're keeping the language consistent. You'll hear, 2nd and 3rd graders talking about thesis statements or the literary essay they wrote, or today in 3rd grade, kids were talking about metaphors and similes. So the academic language that will transfer with them as they move from elementary to middle and high is fantastic. I also love the way this resource, this Units of Study, how it really meets the various levels of learning we have in each classroom. That is one of our teachers' biggest struggles, right? Is that they have such a range of students in their class, and how do you meet each of them in their place? And this program really allows them to do that, because once you do that quick 10-minute mini lesson and get kids off to being writers, it allows you the opportunity to pull a small group back and really hone in on what skill they're lacking or what they're needing to have reinforced in their writing, to then give them that in that small group setting, while my advanced writers might not even just be working on what we talked about today, but they're pulling in all the skills I've taught them all year, and they are just flying along. And they are producing so many pieces of work. The volume of student writing has increased exponentially here, which is so exciting. And kids love to share their writing with others, whether it's their peers, whether they're bringing it up to the office to read it to me or my secretary, they love sharing. And that's one of the things that we get to do, is we get to celebrate our students as writers. And that is built into the fabric of Writers Workshop, is celebrating the successes of our students and having them be proud of what they're doing. And so I guess I would just end by letting you know that I feel like we've just really built a strong community of writers in our building, and it's a great place to be. I love being in classrooms during Writers Workshop time. All right, if you have any questions for me, please feel free to reach out. You can get my email online. Thanks.
So in addition to all that has been shared, I will tell you, I think back to the beginning of the school year, and even my experience with units of writing, and Dr. Smith and I were actually, I don't know if she recalls, we were in one of our elementary buildings, and there was 2 young ladies sitting there. You talk about hitting every type of learner. And the young lady could not speak English. Spanish speaking, had only been in the country for a couple of weeks. But she was dying to share her story that she had written in Spanish, while another one of her peers was translating for her. The story was about her transitioned to the United States, but it was a beautiful story written while her friend translated it to Dr. Smith. And I thought, not only are they getting the opportunity to write their story, but in addition, the leadership that we're giving and the opportunities that we're giving another student to take on that role and say, I will translate, I will help support that, so that they feel a part of it. Because I'm sure it was an experience where I'm coming here and everybody's writing in English and I'm not. But yet she was able to write her story while her friend helped with that. So that was powerful to me. And I think the final piece that I will leave you with is, as an educator and as an instructional leader, I think anytime that you go into a building or you go into a classroom, or even as a teacher, I've always referred to the Fundamental 5 instructional model. And when you talk about the Fundamental 5, is that, as educators, we're taught that we should frame the lesson. Framing the lesson means we want to put our objective in terms that students understand. Sometimes we call them I can statements rather than the student will be able to do this, I will be able to do this, or I can do this. The other piece is teaching in the proximity or the power zone. And that means I'm in the middle of it all as a teacher, because I want to know what's going on. I'm not teaching from my desk, I'm not teaching from a podium, I'm in the middle of it all. The other part is the frequent small group discussions, giving them 10 to 15 minutes so they have some purposeful discussion, the recognition and the reinforcement, the importance of doing that as a teacher. And then finally, writing critically, because we know that writing helps improve reading. And all of those Fundamental 5, when we did units of study, units of study hits every aspect of the Fundamental 5, and in turn, fewer behavior issues, students are more engaged, and to them, what they're writing is meaningful and purposeful, so therefore they want to do it. So that was just my spiel on it.
So we'll leave you with some more words out of the mouths of our students, or out of the pencils of our students, on the screen, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
A quick question for you. With so many new and prolific writers, do any of our elementary schools, and I'm showing some ignorance here, do they publish? In the 70s,